Mongolia is the northernmost country in East Asia. It's located on a high plateau and contains many rivers in the north. It also contains three mountain ranges: the Atlay Mountains, the Hangai Mountains, and the Hintian Mountains. As you can see, the Gobi Desert is located in the southeastern portion of Mongolia. Much of the southern area is uninhabited because it is mainly steppe and desert. Mongolia consists mostly of steppe and desert climate in the south and southeast. They have an extreme climate in which temperature ranges from about 90 degrees Fahrenheit in the summer to negative 50 degrees Fahrenheit in the winter. Long, snowy, subarctic winter conditions are known to Mongolians as the Zud, which is a trying time for all. They have a short spring featuring significant dust storms, and from mid-July to September, Mongolia receives most of its rain. Precipitation is scarce and unpredictable, a climate condition that has helped to spawn both the steppe and nomadic lifestyles that they sustain. Northern regions may expect 8 to 14 inches of rain per year, while the south only expect to receive 4 to 8 inches. Some regions of the Gobi never receive rain throughout the year. The vegetation in Mongolia is mostly steppe with desert scrub and desert waste in the south. It also contains patches of temperate grassland and coniferous forests. Because of the low population in this area, much of the land is untouched. Much of the country is classified as natural reserve and protected area. Forests cover approximately 15% of the country. Steppes and grasslands cover about 52%, and deserts and semi-deserts cover 32%. Forests grow thicker on the northern slopes, mostly with deciduous trees.
Mongolia's president is Tasakyagan Obagdor since 2009, and their prime minister is Chimedin Sakanbaleg since 2014. Mongolia was under control of the Soviet Union from 1924 to 1991. Mongolia underwent a peaceful revolution and became a democratic republic. Mongolia held its first ever democratic election since the time of the Great Khans on July 29, 1990. They are now headed to a democracy-type government. Going back to the Khans, the name Mongol comes from a small tribe whose leader, Genghis Khan, began a conquest that would eventually encompass a huge empire stretching from Asia to Europe, as far west as the Black Sea and as far south as India and the Himalayas. There are two regions of Mongolia, Inner and Outer. The Manchu conquered Mongolia in two stages, which led to the division of Inner and Outer Mongolia. After the 1911 Chinese Revolution, Outer Mongolia declared its independence, but the situation was unsettled until 1921, when a Mongol-Russian force captured Ulaanbaatar and formed the Mongolia's People Republic from Outer Mongolia. Efforts to unite Inner and Outer Mongolia failed, and Inner Mongolia remained a part of China, while Outer Mongolia, now Mongolia, maintained its independence, though it was a client state of the Soviet Union until the early 1990s.
Population. Mongolia has a high literacy rate of 99.1%, which means they have good schools. Their life expectancy rate is at 68.31, which isn't very high, so that means that they don't have the best hospitals or medicines. They also have a pretty low HDI number of 0.698, and their GDP is $2,893.84. Mongolia is a less developed nation due to those four indicators. Looking at the population pyramid, we see that there aren't many teenagers from age 10 to 20, but then the population increased again in the 20s. This is because of the communist government that was used in the past. This was a dark time for Mongolia with few jobs and a bad economy, so we see a dip in population pyramid because there weren't many babies being born. Most of Mongolia's population is located in the north and northeast. In the physical geography section, we learned that the southern portion of Mongolia is where the Gobi Desert lies, and it has a steppe and desert climate, and vegetation doesn't get a lot of rain. Also, in the west, they have two mountain ranges. Both of these are reasons why the population is mainly in the north and northeast.
The most important event that takes place in Mongolia is Tsagan Sar, which is organized to celebrate the Lunar New Year. One of Mongolia's common cuisines is known as budog. It is a method of cooking meat where you cook the meat by stuffing it with hot stones. Once the meat is cooked, the fat from the animal oozes out of the skin. Another common food is a dessert known as ulbu, also known as shoe soul cake. The soul cake gets stacked into a big tower which is filled with curdled milk and other sweets. There is always an uneven number of levels in the tower, and each level is formed by 5 cakes. At the top comes a little heap of urim. The number of levels indicates the status of a family, which is determined by the age of the parents and the number of their children. For religion, traditionally Mongols practiced shamanism, worshipping the blue sky. However, Tibetan Buddhism gained more popularity after it was introduced in the 16th century. Tibetan Buddhism shared a common Buddhist goal of individual release from suffering and reincarnation. Tibet's Dalai Lama, who lives in India, is the religion's spiritual leader and is highly respected in Mongolia. As part of their shamanistic heritage, the people practice ritualistic magic, nature worship, exorcism, meditation, and natural healing. At the beginning of the 20th century, Mongolia had hundreds of Buddhist monasteries, and about 30% of all men were monks. Communists led an anti-religious campaign in the 1930s which nearly destroyed the extensive system of monasteries. Under communist rule, atheism was promoted and monasteries were closed. Although some shamanistic practices survived, after the democracy was introduced in 1990, freedom of religion began to take place. The monasteries began to rebuild, and people were again able to practice what they wanted to.